Pittsburgh Steelers fans, what's going on? This is Jeff Hartman, editor of BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, with you for another episode of the Steelers Burning Question. If you're just joining us or you're just tuning in and you're thinking, why in the world is Jeff doing his show on a Tuesday night? It's happened more than once. This time it's another conflict of interest on a Wednesday evening. Therefore, I'm doing the show on Tuesday. We're not going to cut the content now. If you're watching live on YouTube, it's Tuesday. You might be watching on Wednesday. It doesn't matter. If you're listening, though, an audio platform, you're still going to hear this on its regular scheduled day, which will be Thursday morning, the 4th of July. Hopefully, you still have time to check it out. If not, it'll always be there. So let's say you have time over the weekend, you can always check it out then. And make sure you always check out all our podcasts anywhere where you download podcasts. So make sure you check all that out. So the one thing for the burning question, and I got to be honest, sometimes it's tough to think about these burning questions because there's nothing going on right now. Not a bad thing, but there's nothing going on. So I was thinking to myself, okay, are there any topics that I might have talked about before that I could kind of not regurgitate, that's a very negative word, but at least bring up again and think maybe has the answer changed at all? And the 2019 NFL draft is coming on. And now all of a sudden, I'm thinking back to the 2018 draft class. I'm thinking back to in the 2018 group, who's going to make the biggest step forward in 2019? And I think everyone loves to talk about the 2017 draft. I do too. I mean, you have guys, you have three bona fide Pro Bowler starters with TJ Watt, Juju Smith-Schuster, and James Conner there. Tremendous draft class. I like the 2018 draft class, and I think that they have a really good chance to be a group of high impact players. That's what I hope. So one thing that definitely needs to happen with all of these players across the board, you don't see the TJ Watts in this group. The guys that come in to the NFL and it's like they just pick up, they just get it and go. That's not necessarily this group's forte, but from year 1 to year 2, you could see a big jump. But before we get into that, let me go over exactly, in case you forgot, sometimes these draft classes get jumbled in our brains. Who was in the draft class? Okay, there was a first-round pick. That was Terrell Edmonds, safety out of Virginia Tech. Second-round pick was James Washington, wide receiver from Oklahoma State. Third-round pick, Mason Rudolph, quarterback, Oklahoma State. Chuck Wuma, or Chooks Okorafor. He's an offensive tackle, round 5. They didn't have a fourth-round pick. Marcus Allen, safety, Penn State. Round 5, Jalen Samuels, running back, H-back, tight end, fullback, whatever he was coming out of NC State. And then they didn't have a 6th-round pick, and round 7 was Joshua Frazier, defensive tackle. And so here we go. It's one of those situations where obviously Joshua Frazier's out of football. He retired from football after a stint in the AAF. That league folded. He said he's going to hang it up. You look at some of the other players, everyone else is still on the current roster. And so let's go over this. The first 2 names that I'm going to throw out as they're not going to have the biggest leap just because of the position that they play and where they are on the depth chart. Mason Rudolph would be the first. If he wins the second job, that's great, but barring injury, he's not going to play in 2019. So Mason Rudolph is out. Next would be Marcus Allen. He's a guy that was injured a lot last year. He played a little bit more towards the end of the season. He's going to be depth at the safety position. If he makes the team, he's going to have to win a battle or 2 here or there. But still, Marcus Allen is someone that I would say you're not going to expect him to make the biggest jump from an overall production standpoint. He might show tremendous improvement, but at the same time, he might not have the production that would make him high on this list. And so, believe it or not, outside of Frazier, Rudolph, and Allen, I think you can make a case that a lot of these players could be the answer for this question. Okay? Let's start from the back end and go forward. Jalen Samuels. Okay, Jalen Samuels is a guy, came in last year. No one knew what he was going to do. He's a Swiss Army knife. He does everything well, kind of the jack of all trades, master of none. James Conner goes down against the Los Angeles Chargers at Heinz Field. He comes in. What does he do the next week? Rips off 142 yards against the Patriots. He plays well against the Saints. He starts showing his capabilities in the passing game as a receiver towards the end of the season. Really starts to kind of come into his own. Well, shoot, now all of a sudden you're looking at Jalen Samuels and you're saying, this guy could be a bona fide player. Now, I don't think anyone in their right mind is going to suggest that he is going to somehow surpass James Conner. That's, I think, a little outlandish. But at the same time, I think personally that Jalen Samuels could be a very, very good tool and weapon for the Pittsburgh Steelers offense in 2019. What I mean by that is he might not be a pure runner. He might be someone they use out wide. They put into motion, get him met with the mismatches you see, one-on-one defense that type of stuff. He could be that guy for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And so he could have a very big role on this team. Keep that in mind. Let's fast forward now to round 3 to Chooks Okorafor. Second round player. He's a guy that when he came out of Western Michigan, everyone said that if he were a player that played for Alabama, he'd be a first round pick. He has the size, he has the speed, he has the strength. Just not that very well known. So I think heck, you want to talk about it. This is something that if I talked about earlier in the season or earlier in the offseason, he has a legitimate chance to win the right tackle spot. If he wins the right tackle spot, you better think that means that he is having a huge step from year 1 to year 2. And not only that, he's having a big impact on the team at the same time. So don't rule out Okorafor if he wins the job of being a guy that has the biggest impact on this team, because he would have to open up holes for the running game. That'd be Connor, Samuels, Benny Snell, doesn't matter, or whether he's protecting Ben Roethlisberger at right tackle. So you have all those situations there with Okorafor. He could be the guy. Round 2, James Washington. Antonio Brown leaves. You think that a guy like Washington, who is known for his deep ball skills at Oklahoma State, would be able to just kind of slide right in, make himself at home. And he did not play that great the first 3 quarters of the season, but I felt in the last quarter of the NFL season, his rookie year in 2018, he actually started to kind of get acclimated. He kind of started to figure it out, to kind of understand exactly what the Steelers are asking of him. And it's one of those situations where I think James Washington could really step up. He's going to have a competition with Dante Moncrief. Obviously, he'll be fighting with guys like Eli Rogers and Ryan Switzer for time on the field. He should be able to carve out his own portion of that playbook, and he should see the field a lot. And because he's going to see the field a lot, he has the best chance of actually making an impact. If you think about who we've talked about already, Jalen Samuels is not going to be a starter. Chooks Okorafor is not the starter yet. So James Washington's going to play a lot. So he, therefore, would have a better opportunity to actually make an impact. And then the first-round pick, Terrell Edmunds, I thought that his rookie season was kind of bland, kind of vanilla, but it wasn't horrible. Okay, it's kind of like vanilla ice cream. You have it, it tastes good, but at the same time, it's not chocolate. I feel like Terrell Edmunds was his rookie season was kind of like vanilla ice cream. It was okay. He made some plays, missed on a couple, but it wasn't bad. I still like vanilla ice cream. So I think Terrell Edmunds, and people forget this too, he played a ton last year. That wasn't by design. When Morgan Burnett was banged up all the time, he was forced into the starting role. That experience is going to pay off big time. And he's going to be the every down player as long as he's healthy. He and Sean Davis are going to be the starting tandem. He's going to have a great opportunity to make plays. So when I look at all of this and I ask myself which player is going to have the biggest impact or the biggest step forward from 2018 and 2019, it is really tough for me to pick anyone other than Edmunds because I know how much he's going to play. James Washington would be second, but if Chooks Okorafor wins the starting job, I'd put him second because he's going to be on the field more than James Washington will be. And then if Okorafor starts, it's between James Washington and Jalen Samuels because I think Jalen Samuels is going to be that much of an impact. He's going to be an impact player for the team this year. And people might say, well, how's he going to fit in? Trust me, the Steelers will find a way to fit him in because he is that type of player. He has that type of skill set. So that's my answer. I'm going to go with Edmonds because obviously he's going to play a lot. But I could see cases being made for a lot of other players in this 2018 draft class. This is a group that a lot of people criticize. This is a guy that these are players that everything from Terrell Edmonds when he was drafted, everyone said, wait, who? To all the other players that everyone was kind of like shaking their head. They took Rudolph in the third. What does that mean? All this stuff happened. I think this was a good group. I still like this draft class. I think they're going to play well. I think they're going to perform well. But if you're in the live chat right now on YouTube, I'm curious what you all think. Who is going to be the biggest impact player and make the biggest jump from year 1 to year 2 from those guys that I just named? That's Edmonds, that's Samuels, that's Okorafor, that's Marcus Allen, that's Mason Rudolph. Who am I forgetting? Samuels. I think I forgot Jalen Samuels. You guys know the group by now. So go ahead and drop that in the live chat if you're watching live on YouTube. And if you didn't know we had a YouTube channel, check us out, BTSC Steelers Radio. Like and subscribe, share. We appreciate all the love there. And this is also the time in the show where I open up the live chat for questions from you. Steelers related questions, you can feel free to enter them into the chat room. And always remember, you can use the super chat feature if you'd like. You don't have to, but it's there. And what that is if you write in a question, if you use that super chat feature, you can put in any amount of money, which could be what we call the tip jar. And that money will go directly into an account and come straight to the show, where we can do giveaways during the season, which we're planning on doing, and some other things like that. So any help you give is awesome, but you don't have to. It'll highlight your question and it'll be guaranteed to be answered. So far, a lot of people are saying Edmonds. Some are saying Washington and Chooks, Samuels, Edmonds, Samuels. The more, yeah. So this is the interesting thing about this question. So far, the last few weeks that I've done the Steelers burning question, the questions have been very much, okay, we're going to have one or the other. Do you extend Mike Tomlin's contract or don't you? Will this happen or won't this? This is a question where I think you could have a lot of different answers, and a lot of people could actually justify their responses based on what could potentially happen in the future. You could say that Jalen Samuels is going to have a big role in the offense. You could say that Chooks is going to win the starting right tackle job. You could say that James Washington is going to step up and be a big-time playmaker. You could say that Terrell Edmonds is, because he's going to play the most out of everybody. That's going to be interesting. But if you have any questions, now's the time to ask. Go ahead and fire away. I'll ask as many as I can before we call it a show. And we appreciate all of you listening, as always, and communicating in the live chat. It makes the experience a lot better. I can tell you that hands down. So Steelers fan 19 says, Jeff, how different do you think the Steelers' history would be if the Steelers kept Emmanuel Sanders over Antonio Brown? Interesting question. To me, it was never an Antonio Brown versus Emmanuel Sanders when they came down to the contract. It was always Mike Wallace and Antonio Brown. Emmanuel Sanders was a good receiver. He was not great in Pittsburgh. I would say that he became a much better receiver when he got around Peyton Manning. That's not a cut on Ben Roethlisberger. That's just the fact that maybe Sanders and Manning got along better than Sanders and Roethlisberger. That happens. There's conflicts and things of that nature. So, yeah, I don't think it would have changed too much. Even with Wallace, you have so much success. And that's what I tell myself. I find myself just recently, yesterday, last night, I was editing an article by Tony DeFeo, which ran today, published today, and it was about how his favorite moment of the 2018 season was, he was looking at the Steelers' 28-21 win over the Bengals in Cincinnati at Paul Brown Stadium. And it's crazy how the offseason and the way things have gone down with Brown and Bell, more Brown than Bell, have just really tarnished what happened last year. That game was tremendous. If you forget, that was the game where in the waning moments of the contest, Roethlisberger hits Brown on that quick slant. He turns it up the field, splits the safeties, and rumbles into the touchdown game, into the end zone for the touchdown. And it was essentially game over. A tremendous, tremendous game. And Antonio Brown went from a nobody, a no-name kid, 6th-round draft pick from Central Michigan, who no one gave two craps about, to becoming one of the greatest receivers in the entire National Football League. I guess with that comes some ego, we'll put it that way. But, Emmanuel Sanders, would he have been different? I don't know. That's a really good question, though, Steelers fan. I appreciate that. That's definitely a debate-worthy one. Ryan says he's looking forward to preseason games. I have to be honest, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm excited for preseason too. I'm not excited for the season to start. I enjoy this time where there's really no news, where the it's doing fine. It has the regulars that come and they check it out, and we still put out content and all that stuff. But it's a time where I can actually relax. If you think about the season, it's not a long season, but from the moment of July when they report to training camp until January, maybe hopefully February this year, you're inundated with news every single day, and it's 12 articles a day, and making sure everything's good, podcasts, all that. And then after that, it starts the draft prep. And then after that is the free agency starts, and the new league year in March, and then the draft, and then all these, it just doesn't stop. So for me, I'm looking forward to the season. I'm looking forward to the preseason to see some of these battles come to fruition. But ultimately, I'm not looking forward to that. I like a little bit of downtime. So Felicia, our number one fan, she gives two comments for the tip jar. One was $20. Thank you, Felicia. She says, "Hey Jeff, missed you and Lance on Sunday. I'm going for Edmonds and Washington this season. Can't wait to see what Dave comes up with on the Q&A of the awesome foursome of the podcast." Quick scheduling note: the Felicia's comment made it, because we typically are on Thursday nights for the Steelers preview, and it's the 4th of July. If you're a listener in the United States of America, that's obviously our Independence Day. We will not be doing our show on Thursday night. And Dave is actually on vacation. I'm going to talk to Dave, see if he's going to give us his Stat Geek stuff. But otherwise, it's just going to be myself, and it's going to be Brian Anthony Davis. And I'm not sure if we're going to snag a third in there. But if not, it'll just be the two of us but we're going to do that tomorrow night. So it's a Wednesday night. So I actually forgot about that. And here I am on Tuesday night. We're going to do that show sometime tomorrow night. It might be a little bit later, but we'll be doing that tomorrow night on Wednesday. So make sure you keep your calendar checked off there. Felicia also says that for $5 in the tip jar, Watt doesn't get enough attention. He's a beast. I think that Watt's getting some attention now. Yeah, after having over 12 sacks last season, he was the last Steeler linebacker to have double-digit sacks in a season since James Harrison did it. So I think that he is getting a little bit more attention. If he can duplicate that success again and show that his trajectory is on line with, say, his brother JJ, started off strong and then just kept going, Defensive Player of the Year. In that discussion, I'm not saying he's going to be. I think this is going to be a big year for him. So it's your Jeff. What would you have to do differently for the Steelers to win Super Bowl 45? Super Bowl 45. That's one I try to forget. Rashard Mendenhall, don't fumble the football, comes to mind first. I really don't want to bring that up too much. That game sucked. Don't like watching the Steelers lose in the Super Bowl. I have seen that twice, and that's too many times. Alvin asked, do you think Ryan Switzer is what it takes to be the next Edelman and become a Super Bowl MVP? I think he'll be considered the X factor this season. I absolutely think Ryan Switzer could be an Edelman-type player. The question isn't to me whether he can be an Edelman-type player. It's whether the Steelers' offense wants to be a Patriots-like offense. The Patriots are a very smooth operating machine. In other words, they take what's given to them, period. And if it's, one of those situations where, hey, you're gonna double this guy, then we're gonna just dump it underneath this guy. The Steelers sometimes do that, and they sometimes get away with that. I think if they have Brown gone, there's no need to force him the football anymore. I think if they can get into their minds that we just take what the defense gives, Ryan Switzer could have a big year. That's if they trust him. Ben trusts him, and that's important. Keep that in mind. Crazy Chris drops $5 in the tip jar. Appreciate it, Chris. He says, "Hey Jeff, would you feel safer betting on Juju Smith-Schuster after he beat his 40 time from the combine as his fantasy standpoint? Love the show. You guys keep me busy. I'm glad you watched the show. Shows plural. I hope that more people continue to watch the shows. Our platform is growing. We appreciate that. So here we go. Today, it was actually pretty interesting. Juju Smith-Schuster was in England. He was in London. And for those that read the site regularly, behindthesteelcurtain.com, you might have seen a lot of articles from my deputy editor. His name is Simon Chester. Simon is an Englishman. He lives in England, and he went to the event today. He got credentials, and he was at the event. He met he's able to ask Juju a question in a little media scrum. He was able to interview Christian Scotland Williamson, who is the player that came over to the NFL from the NFL's expansion program, where the Steelers will have 11 players in the practice squad, not just 10, because he'll be guaranteed a spot. It was a really cool event, but Simon mentioned, he sent me a message today and said how Juju ran his 40 time faster than he did coming out of college, and he didn't warm up at all. He was in basically street clothes, and he also was probably jet lagged because he got into London yesterday. So all those things, I think Juju's going to have a good year. And you see pictures of him, like Simon sent me some photos of Juju. It was pretty close to him, and I was like, wow, his arms are big. He looks like he's ready to go. We'll put it that way. So, yeah, from a fantasy standpoint, I feel a little bit more comfortable about Juju Smith-Schuster here after what I saw and from what I heard from Simon today. So make sure you check that out. We're going to have a lot of content coming from that event related to those Steelers that were there. So make sure you check that out. Let's see here. Another question from Steelers. Let's go, Brian. With so many first and second round picks dedicated to our defense, do you think this could be Butler's last year as defensive coordinator if we don't improve? I think that, to me, it is a do or die season, but it's not a do or die. That's not using the correct terminology. It is a do or you won't have your contract renewed situation. So just like with Todd Haley, when the Steelers got out of firing him, they just said, we're not going to renew his contract, AKA, we don't want you back, AKA, you're fired. So Keith Butler's under the last year of his contract currently. He just got his prized possession in Devin Bush. It was the one thing that he always kind of had a crutch on with, well, Ryan Shazier was the guy and he's gone and we don't have the backup. Devin Bush is supposed to be that guy. So if you can't put all those players on the field, all those, like you said, the first and second round picks, then yeah, it's time to go. Time to start anew. Someone says, when do you think the Steelers will win the Super Bowl again? Well, I'm hoping in 2019. And I'm hoping, because it's in Miami, that the SB Nation Vox Media would send me down there to cover the game. That would be awesome. In late January, February, to go down to Florida. That would be pretty cool to spend some time down there. Nonetheless, yeah, we'll see. Hopefully it's this year. I think this team is going to be scary in a lot of different ways. I talked to Dave Schofield recently, not on our podcast, and I told him how I said that this team is so curious to me. There are times where I think to myself, boy, this team could be dangerous, like dangerous good. And then I think, boy, there are some really glaring question marks on this roster at the same time. So I'm not sure what to expect. All I know is that there should be less drama this year. That's all I'm saying. Okay, let's go with one more question here before we call it a show. Ryan asks, are you concerned about the age of any of the players this season? I can think the only player that I can think of, players plural, when it comes to age that I'm possibly concerned of, number one is Joe Hayden. And it's not that Joe Hayden's old. I believe he's maybe 30 or 31, but he's been injured a lot. And that can kind of wear on you as you get older. And they need him. They need him to be healthy. And then the obvious one, number two, is Ben Roethlisberger. He's been in the league since 2004. Or going into 2019. Do the math. He just needs to stay healthy. The Steelers have been doing a good job with him, giving him rest days, things like that. I have no doubt that he's going to need to be number one in terms of health, and being available if they want to win a Super Bowl. So there you go. So, all right. I thank you for everyone that participated in the live chat, that was there. It's kind of an impromptu show. Remember, tomorrow night will be our Steelers preview. I will still stagger these out on our podcast platform so you all can check them out at your leisure over the holiday weekend. For those that are in the United States of America, make sure you check out BehindTheSteelCurtain.com for all your Pittsburgh Steelers needs. And as always, as Lance says at the end of every show, tune in, tell a friend, and subscribe. We'll see you next week for another episode of the Steelers Burning Question.